Hello people of the internet, my name is Corbin aka Cibernetize and welcome back to another video on my channel. Now this is something that pretty much all my friends know about me, but you may not know about me, but I like video games. And I don't know if you're able to tell that from the fact that I'm wearing a hat with the PlayStation logo on it, or the fact that on my bedroom wall is a flag of one of the main factions in Fallout New Vegas. Or maybe it's from the fact that my entire YouTube homepage is just recommendations for video game related content, whether that be reviews, let's plays, or pretty much just the angry video game nerd. Either way, point is, I like video games. But not only do I like video games, but I also like collecting video games. Now my video game collection may not be as huge as most that you'll see online. Two that I can think of right now is this one guy that I've been seeing a lot of ads for on YouTube. And another one being this one guy I saw once on TikTok who claims to have a database of literally millions of video games. But I'm proud of just the small collection that I have. And as you may have noticed from just the stock footage I've shown of my game collection, I really like PlayStation. Keep in mind, PlayStation is not the very first console I ever owned, it's just the one that I grew up and just came to love. And with the addition of both a PS Vita and a PS5 to my console collection, I think it's safe to say that until the PSVR 2 comes out, I have every PlayStation console. And so for this video I just figured what the hell, and I just go through all the consoles that I have, plus a few of the games that I have, and pretty much just talk about the history of PlayStation. Picture it. It's the 1990s. Nirvana was just a few years off of releasing their first album, Bleach. Posters of boy heartthrob Jonathan Taylor Thomas were adorning the walls of teenage girls across the nation. Indie film actress Winona Ryder was on her rise to stardom. And Sony was working with Nintendo to create a CD-based ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. However, for one reason or another, the deal would fall through because Nintendo would scrap the idea for having a CD-based ROM add-on. Sony exec Ken Kutaragi, understandably pissed that the deal fell through, decided to say fuck you to Nintendo, and so, in December of 1996, the PlayStation was born. The PlayStation would introduce us to such gaming icons as Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. It would introduce us to the world of survival horror with titles such as the original Resident Evil trilogy as well as Silent Hill. It introduced us to action game staples like Tomb Raider and Siphon Filter. And it would defy the stealth genre with Metal Gear Solid. The original controller for the PlayStation was truly a sight to behold. I only have a third-party one, but just go with me here. Somewhat like the NES controller, it had 4 face buttons, a directional pad, a start and a select button, but had 4 buttons on the back instead of 2, which was standard at the time. Sony would then go on to make the DualShock controller, which is the controller we see nowadays with the PlayStation. This controller was pretty much exactly the same as the original PlayStation controller, but with the addition of 2 analog sticks as well as a unique vibration feature. Little did people know at the time, but this would soon become the industry standard for video game controllers. Sony was really ahead of the curve here. We also have the PS1 light gun, and the only reason I think it exists is just because both the NES and SNES had gun controllers as well. Towards the release of the PS2, Sony would also come out with a slimmer model for the PS1, quite literally calling it the PS1. This one, sold separately, also had an LCD screen, which is perfect for when you want to bring your PlayStation over to your aunt and uncle's house. I don't think this design is as iconic as the original PS1 model, but nonetheless, it's still really interesting. Let's skip ahead to the year 2000. Grunge was out, emo was in. Girls were replacing their Jonathan Taylor Thomas posters with Justin Timberlake posters. Stars like Avril Lavigne and Rihanna were on the rise. And it was time for the newest generation of consoles. Sega would have the Dreamcast, which would prove to be its final console ever. Microsoft would introduce us to the legend that we know today as the Xbox. Nintendo would bring us the GameCube. And Sony would give us the PlayStation 2. The PS2 would popularize the hack and slash genre with titles such as Devil May Cry and God of War. The PS2 would also be host to the 3D Grand Theft Auto trilogy, San Andreas going on to break the record for the most amount of copies sold on the PS2 system. The PS2 mascot wars would introduce us to IPs such as Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, as well as Ratchet and Clank. We would also see sequels to such PS1 titles as Metal Gear Solid 2, as well as the fan-loved, infamous, and honestly, the best game in the Metal Gear series. We would see the origin of Yakuza, which is the greatest IP Sega's put out since Sonic the Hedgehog. And then there's Kingdom Hearts, which is going to take me a whole nother video and a bottle of whiskey to get through. When it came to the PS2's controller, it was more or less the same thing as the PS1 DualShock controller. The only notable difference, really, was that the face buttons as well as the D-pad were pressure sensitive, which would change varying based on what game you were playing. And by that, I mean it would vary from game to game whether or not they had pressure-sensitive controls, not necessarily that the controller would adapt to the game. That's not really something we would see until the PS5. Much like with the PS1 towards the end of its life cycle, the PS2 would also introduce a slimmer model, which is really just the same thing as a PS2, work exactly the same. Only notable difference is that, well, obviously it's slimmer, and to open the PS2 it would have a plate that would slide up instead of a tray that would slide out, which is more reminiscent of the original PlayStation's design. At the time of its release, the PS2 was being marketed not only as a video game console, but as a DVD player as well. Given that not only DVD was the hot new media at the time, but also given the fact that a PS2 brand new was cheaper than your run-of-the-mill DVD players back then, is what I feel gave the PS2 a bit of an edge when it came to the number of units sold. I mean, hell, to date, the PS2 has sold more units than any other console in the world. We now come to the year 2006. George Clooney was named Sexiest Man Alive by People magazine. Network hits such as Hannah Montana, Dexter, and 30 Rock were coming to a TV near you. The era of social media was just beginning with websites such as Facebook and Twitter, and it was the 7th generation of gaming. While Microsoft would start the generation off strong, laying its hand down with the Xbox 360, Sony would see itself going all in with the PlayStation 3. Continuing with sequels to previous gen exclusives, we have titles such as God of War 3 as well as Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. Sucker Punch would start a new rise in the superhero genre of gaming with its new IP, Infamous. And then there are some games with pretty amazing visuals, which is about all I can really say for Quantic Dream games, considering all the shit that's come out about David Cage over the years. I honestly think this guy can probably just go and fuck himself. And then there was one game at the very end of the PS3's life cycle that not only hit it out of the park, but was so amazing that so many people went out to buy the PS3 in droves. And this game was LA Noire. Oh shit, fuck, I grabbed the wrong game off the shelf, hang on. And that game was The Last of Us. What can I say about The Last of Us that genuinely hasn't been said before? This was probably the only game to ever make me cry harder than the end of Telltale's The Walking Dead. The majority of the game takes place a whole 20 years into the zombie apocalypse, which is something we really hadn't seen from any zombie media before. This game had some of the best graphics I've ever seen from this generation, which is saying something because I'm not really a graphics guy. This game had levels of zombie gore, which I didn't think I'd see again until the eventual release of the Resident Evil 2 remake. And this game also, in my opinion, had really great shooting mechanics as well as hand-to-hand melee combat. To this day, if you were to ask me what games define the PS3, the first thing that would come to mind is The Last of Us. I mean, if you ask me, this is probably the best game that Naughty Dog has ever made, as well as their last good one. Much like when Sony advertised the PS2 as a DVD player, Sony would also advertise the PS3 as a Blu-ray player. At the very least, I vaguely remember them trying to market it as a Blu-ray player. I mean, hell, my best friend's dad, who is a loyal Microsoft employee, bought a PS3 just to use it as a Blu-ray player. That just shows game recognizes game. When it comes to the PS3's controller, they really just had a if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. Unless, of course, we're talking about the prototype controller, because honestly, what the actual fuck is that? The only notable changes, other than the fact that it's wireless, is just the fact that they made the L2 and R2 buttons work more like triggers than just buttons. Then there was the PlayStation Move controller. This was just Sony's attempt to capitalize on the motion control phase of gaming, which included the Nintendo Wii and the Xbox Kinect. The one thing I can really say that I like about this controller is pretty much just the really springy, spongy kind of trigger that it has on here. Fuck it, let's give it a gun. I'm not really a gun guy, so please correct me if I'm wrong here, but this gun straight up looks like they just took the front of a P90 and then just put the stock of an AR-15 on it. It has like a 3-way switch on it, and even though it has 4 buttons on it, the only buttons are just the triangle and the square button. Yeah, I really don't think there's going to be any way to make yourself look badass with this, and trust me, I've used editing magic. I tried to make myself look like a badass holding this. The PS3 would also have 2 other models, such as the PlayStation Slim, which, while it was still backwards compatible with the PS1, was no longer backwards compatible with the PS2. And then there was the PS3 Super Slim, which had one of the weirdest looking disc trays I've ever seen. What the hell is this sliding design? Who asked for this? What the actual fuck? And then at exactly the same time as the PS3, the PSP came out. The PSP would have portable titles for such PlayStation IPs as Metal Gear Solid. It would give both Ratchet & Clank's Clank as well as Jak and Daxter's Daxter their own game. It would have a portable Assassin's Creed title, which weirdly enough played a lot like the original. It had Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, which while it's a good game, I still think that the franchise is the bane of my existence. And who could forget my favorite game on the whole system, Monster Hunter Freedom? No, I'm just kidding, fuck this stupid game. When it comes to the PSP system itself, I love this thing. When I press the face buttons or the D-pad, it feels like I'm pressing the same face buttons and D-pad as I would on an actual PlayStation controller. It's sleek, it's beautiful, it feels good to hold in my hand, and it hums like a fucking cat in heat when a disc is in it. The only real hang-up I have for this system is just this excuse that they call a joystick. I honestly have absolutely no idea what the designers are trying to pull here, but it feels like I'm touching a nipple, but not in the good way. But other than that, I think that for Sony's first portable console, it's not bad. 7.5 out of 10. Let's jump forward to the year 2012. The world did not end despite what the Mayan calendar said. The Endeavour space shuttle would have its final flight. We would see Marvel's Avengers, which was a key moment in both cinema as well as comic book history. And Sony would come out with its last handheld, the PS Vita. Looking at its design first, the PS Vita was a lot slimmer than the PSP, and it had these 2 touchpads on the back as well as cameras. While in my opinion the buttons are a bit stiffer and are a bit more clicky-clacky than just a smooth press, the one improvement I can say is that it does have actual joysticks. The only bad thing I can really say about the system is that if you have big hands like me, be prepared for your thumbs to cover up the speakers. The only exclusive game I have for this system is just Book of Memories, but it's not bad. And I can play Metal Gear Solid 3 wherever the hell I want, so again, can't really complain. As I said when I first introduced the console, yeah, this would prove to be Sony's final portable system. While I do enjoy this system, I can really see why it was just a commercial failure. Other than just a handful of exclusive titles, all the PS Vita really had was just ports of games that were already on consoles. And if you were to ask me if you had to choose a port, I would definitely choose the console ports over the PS Vita ports. If for some reason you're watching this, Sony, I'm sorry, I'm just telling it how it is. Let's fast forward 1 year to 2013. Pop culturally speaking, nothing really significant happened that year. Microsoft would release the Xbox One around the holiday season, and at the same time Sony would release the PS4. The PS4's lifecycle would start off with a bang with the 3rd installment in Sucker Punch's infamous series. We would see Death Stranding, which would be the first project done by Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima after leaving Konami. We would see Days Gone, which would be Ben Studios' first release in over a couple decades, which, honestly, it's quite a solid open-world survival game. We had this little gem called Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a great game, but honestly its release was outshone by Breath of the Wild. The PS4 would also revive such PS2 staples such as Ratchet & Clank as well as God of War. And then the PS4's life cycle appropriately ended with the same game that ended Naughty Dog. I genuinely think the only reason Last of Us Part 2 won Game of the Year was because Naughty Dog forced all of its employees to either vote online or be fired. The fact that 97 other companies said that Hades won Game of the Year and only the Video Game Awards said The Last of Us Part 2 won just really goes to show that's a fucking fluke. The PS4's controller would be the first redesign we would see with the PlayStation in quite literally 2 decades. It has weed stickers on it because I bought this secondhand. The controller had a light-up motion tracker which worked really great with games like Until Dawn. The front of the controller would feature a speaker in which the game would talk to directly, as well as a touchpad interface. Other models of the PS4 would include the PS4 Slim as well as the PS4 Pro, which upscaled games to 4K and bumped it up from 30 FPS to 60 FPS, which was a relatively new thing when it comes to consoles. In 2016, the rise of virtual reality headsets would eventually lead Sony to give birth to the PSVR. The PlayStation VR would hook up directly to your PS4 system, so no other hardware required. The VR itself is actually really top quality and it was really cheap, which was able to make everyone afford a VR headset considering it was the cheapest given the price of all other headsets at the time. While it's not an exclusive, my personal favorite game on the VR is Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. And the first experience I would have with the PSVR is with Resident Evil 7, which had a VR mode exclusive to the PSVR.
It's good. Don't so bitch with no good to hit him.
By the way, was I the only one who was upset when Resident Evil Village didn't have a VR mode also? And finally, the controllers for the PSVR itself were quite literally just 2 PlayStation 3 Move controllers. And here we will end this video off with the year 2020. The world was plunged into a global pandemic thanks to someone in China who ate a bat. During quarantine, everyone became obsessed with a gay redneck who owned a bunch of tigers in Oklahoma. And with everyone stuck inside with absolutely nothing to do, it was the perfect time to introduce the 9th console generation. And it's here that Sony would release the Mac Daddy, the creme de la creme, the most technologically advanced console yet, the PS5. When it comes to games at launch, the PS5 would start off strong, with Spider-Man Miles Morales, direct sequel to the PS4 Spider-Man game, as well as a direct sequel to the PS4 Ratchet & Clank called Ratchet & Clank: A Rift Apart. And right now the PS5 is really big on bringing director's cuts of PS4 games, such as the director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima, as well as the director's cut of Death Stranding. And that's about all I can really say right now for games, because, the console's still relatively new and there aren't a whole lot of exclusives out yet. The PS5's controller, called the DualSense, has to be the best controller I think I've ever used. The 2 key features is the vibration feature, which will for instance adjust to the ground that you're walking on in game to make it feel like you're really touching it, but it also has adaptive triggers which will react to the guns you use. And of course I feel like I can't really do this video without just going over the shit show that it came to when it comes to actually getting a PS5. I consider myself very lucky to have even gotten a PS5 in the first place. With the amount of horror stories going around on the internet, such as price gougers and even some rumors that came out where people had their PS5s stolen by the package delivery people who were delivering their PS5s to them. All I can really say is that I just feel incredibly lucky to have just gotten this console in the first place. I know I already said that and I sound like a broken record. And no BBC, no amount of stories that you put out about how bad the people who are price gouging feel will ever make me feel sorry for those pieces of shit. And even though it's not out yet, let's just talk about the PSVR 2 real quick. From what I've read of the specs, this thing is projected to be the best VR headset on the market. We are projected to see such launch titles as a VR Horizon game, one that I'm particularly excited for, which is a 1980s anime-inspired cyberpunk dystopia. And then there are some titles that are currently just rumored to be coming out to the PSVR 2 on launch, such as Boneworks VR and Half-Life Alyx. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you guys don't mind if I switch into a more appropriate shirt. I hope that you guys either found this video entertaining or somewhat informative. If you like this video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up so that way that tells me that you liked it and that I should strive to make more content. If you didn't like it, well, YouTube kind of just got rid of the dislike button, so, sorry. Don't worry, you can still just leave a hate comment and I'll just read it while eating ice cream and crying. Also like to give a big thank you to all my friends and Discord randos who helped me get photos of all the models that I didn't have just so that I could give you all visual representations. If you like the content, please feel free to subscribe because that tells me you like the content. Please be sure to follow me on Twitter because I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. And now if you don't mind, I'm going to play some Deathloop. Think you can get a headshot from this distance? Yes, 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 yes. Ugh, son of a bitch.